In this video, we will be creating a new Django project using the Visual Studio IDE. Start by opening the Visual Studio IDE. Make sure that when you have installed the Visual Studio IDE that you selected all of the Python web development tools and the build tools. Otherwise, when you click Create a New Project button and then search for Django, you won't see the results that appear. So if you did, you will see these results, and then select Blank Django Web Project. Go ahead and name your project anything you'd like. I named mine Becoming a Django Dev. And then select the folder that you wanted to place it in, and check the Place Solution and Project in the same directory option. Then click Create. And then it should open up with the settings file, and you'll notice that in the directory that you created that project, that all of the base files for Django project now exist, including some extra files that pertain to the solution files for Visual Studio. In this video, we will be creating a new Django project using the command line on a Windows PC. This assumes that a virtual environment was not created first. We will be creating the project using the Python packages that are installed globally on your machine. In order to do that, we need to uninstall Django first and then reinstall Django with the version that we have. We're doing this just in case, say your machine has Django 2.0 installed and we are using Django 4.0. This would prevent those version mix-ups. So start by opening your command line in the directory that you would like to install your Django project in. For this, I'm using Windows PowerShell and running it as an administrator. So here we uninstall Django first, and then follow the prompts that it asks you. Yes, I want to proceed. Then install Django with the specific version of 4.0, the latest version, by the way. And once that is complete, you could go ahead and run the Start Project command, specifying the name of your app. The name that I've given mine is Becoming a Django Dev. If you're on a Mac or a Linux machine and this command does not work, you may need to use the Django-admin start project and then the name of your project command. And as you can see, it created the new folder, and inside are the base files that come with a standard start project command. In this video, we will be creating a new virtual environment using the Visual Studio IDE. And so I've already got my Becoming a Django Dev solution open, and I'm going to create an IDE by navigating to the Solution Explorer. Here I'll see the name of my project inside the Solution Explorer, where I can expand down into it. Under the Python Environments drop down, you'll see that the standard Python environment exists, but that's not the one that we will be using. We'll be creating our own so that we can mimic the exact same behavior of using the command line. So by right-clicking on Python Environments, go to Add Environment, type in the name of your virtual environment. Here I will be calling it virtual_env to keep it consistent with the examples in the book. For the base interpreter, I will be choosing Python 3.9, the latest base interpreter that exists for Visual Studio. The location will be in the project root. The root of your project, not the root of your repository. So this will be the same folder that your manage.py file lives in. And then to select the requirements.txt file, again, we will be using the requirements.txt file that's found in the root of your project, not the root of your repository. So this is the file that lives in the same folder as your manage.py file. Set as current environment. And you could view it in the Python environments window. We'll go ahead and create. And you can see it opens up an output window that tells you all of the information pertaining to creating that virtual environment. So this is the same output that you would see in the command line if you were doing it that way. And depending on your internet connection and the size of your requirements.txt file, this could take quite some time to install, or it could be lightning fast. And then once it's complete, you'll see that it's in your Python environments. If we go back to our Solution Explorer, we'll see that the virtual env is now exists. And if you expand into that, you could see all of the different packages and what the current version number of that package that is installed in your virtual environment for this project. And if you are still on chapter 2, you're going to see more packages in my example right here than you would following with the book, because I've gone through all of the chapters, so I have more packages in my requirements.txt file. Now, to run this project within the Visual Studio IDE, simply go to the top of your IDE and select the play button that I'm pointing to here. Under the drop down, you could select the different browsers that you would like to use if you have them installed. I'm using Firefox Developer Edition. If you don't see this, right click on your IDE, and I believe it's standard, or could be one of these other two that are checked that you have to enable in order to be able to show this button. Simply press that button, and this executes the Python manage.py run server command. It'll automatically open up the window for you. You'll notice that the port number that it specified is not the default port 8000. Instead, it's an unused random port, in this case 59,701. Now if we wanted to specify an exact port number within the Visual Studio IDE, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop running it now. Go to your Projects tab at the top of your IDE and scroll down to the very bottom where it says the name of your project, Becoming a Django Dev properties. Within that, when that tab that opens, the sub-tab under Debug is where we're going to specify our port number. So here I'm just going to enter in the default port number of 8000, and the little asterisk over here indicates, and up at the top over here, indicates that it is not saved. So I'm going to hit Control S to save it, or you can go up to File and Save All or Save selected. Now that it's saved, when I go back and press the Run or Play button again, we'll see that it is now pointing to port 8000, which is what we would expect if we were just running the standard run server command. What Visual Studio also does is it opens up the cmd.exe window, and here you could see all of the different outputs that you would normally get in a regular command line operation. So if you have print statements, or you wanted to see specific error messages that were being displayed, this would be the window to go view it. Additionally, Visual Studio does have the output window, which also shows you the same exact thing. And if we go down to the View tab and go down to Terminal, which is different from the output window, by the way, we can see that we get our standard command line that we can interact with, similar to a terminal or the cmd.exe or even Windows PowerShell. So you would interact with it in the exact same way. And you want to make sure that you're in the same folder, so I'm obviously in a different folder. And you can activate your virtual environment and interact with the project in the exact same way. So right now I have 2 different virtual environments activated at this time. But that is not necessary for this particular demonstration. And so that concludes using the IDE. In this video, we will be creating a new virtual environment using the command line for our Django project. Again, I will be using the Windows PowerShell IDE, and we will be starting in the root of our repository. This is the same folder that your .git folder lives in. And here we want to navigate into the root of our project, where our manage.py file lives in. So I'll be using the cd becoming a Django Dev command in order to navigate into that folder. In my browser, I'm going to open up the same folder so that you could see what is happening. In order to create our virtual environment, we will be using the python-m venv, and then the name of our virtual environment, which I'm naming virtual_env. And this will work in Windows, Mac, and Linux. And as we can see, it already created the new folder, virtual_env, and it is finished creating all the files that pertain to a new virtual environment. Now, if you were on a Mac or a Linux machine and that did not work, an alternative that you could use would be the virtual env command, and you could run that by first installing virtual env by running pip install virtual env, and then execute the virtual env space and then the name of your virtual environment command, just like that. However, that won't work on my machine. And now that we have the virtual environment created, we need to activate our virtual environment. And on a Windows PC, I'm going to be doing this by running this command, virtual_env/scripts/activate. And we can see that it's been activated because the name of our virtual environment appears to the left of the folder path in your command line. And in PowerShell, it's represented by a different color. If you were on a Mac or a Linux PC, running your virtual environment would use this command, the source and space and then the name of your virtual environment, so virtual_env/bin/activate. And now that the virtual environment has been activated, we will go ahead and install the requirements.txt file. And note that in this particular setup we have two requirements.txt files. And the first, living in the root of our repository, is it lives there in order to satisfy Heroku, and inside of that file it just points to the requirements.txt file that is in the root of our project, where our manage.py file lives. And so you can see that inside this file is where we actually put all of the packages that we want installed. You may see more represented here than you do if you are still working on Chapter 2, because I have already gone through all of the chapters in this book prior to recording this video. And so this represents all of the packages for all of the chapters. Now that we've taken a look inside those files, let's go ahead and run the command that will actually install them into our virtual environment. Now note that my virtual environment is already activated when I'm running this command. If my virtual environment was not activated and I ran this command, then what it would do is install all of these packages globally on my machine, on my development machine where Python has been installed. You want to make sure that you did activate your virtual environment so that you can keep your packages separated from project to project. And so I'm doing that by running the pip install-r requirements.txt command, and this will work on all three major platforms, Windows, Mac, and Linux. And this can take some time to install depending on your internet connection and the number of packages that you're actually including. And if you don't have that many, then it could be lightning fast. In this case, it shouldn't take too long at all. And now that all of our packages are installed in our virtual environment, we will go ahead and run our project. using the python manage.py run server command. And we can see that it's installed all of the packages that are required and ran without error. To exit out of this operation, to stop it from running, you could press Control C or Command C if you're on a Mac or Linux in order to break out of that. If you want to specify a specific port, we do the same manage.py run server command and then a space and the port number that you would like it to run on. In this case, I'm specifying port 8000, which was the default port anyway. And so now I'll break out of that operation one more time. And to deactivate your virtual environment and go back to the standard command line, we would simply type deactivate. And that is it. In this video, we will be creating our local environment files. And this is just another way to store and keep our variables that are found in our settings.py file. And we do this because Heroku does use containerization and it does require the use of a .env file. And to demonstrate that this is working, before we do anything, I'm just going to run the project in its current state, which does not have anything installed. Environment file wise. And then I'm going to trick it, and I'm going to give it no secret key, and I'm going to run it again. And this time it's going to fail. So we can see we do have a server error that occurred. So now we'll go and create the .env file. And you want to do this in the root of your project, not the root of your repository. So this is going to be the same file folder that your manage.py file lives in. And you can use your mouse and you could create a new text document and just remove the .txt extension that gets created and replace it with a .env file extension. But we're also going to do this in the command line for a lot of you who do prefer to do things in the command line. So we'll use the echo command, and we'll give it one variable to pre-populate this file with. That's going to be the database URL file that you see here, pointing to the SQLite 3 database. And we can see that it did create the .env file for us. And if you don't have a SQLite 3 database, it's probably because you created your project in a command line. This database is not automatically created for you. It's only automatically created if you created your project using the Visual Studio IDE, as I did in this example. And this exercise also relies on the package called python-env to be installed in your virtual environment, which we already did in a previous exercise. We added that to our requirements.txt file before we even created this project. If it's not there at this time, just run the pip install python-env command to install it into your virtual environment. And in a previous exercise, we added these three import statements into our settings.py file. If it's not there at this time, please go ahead and add those 3 imports into your settings.py file, just like I did here. And then next we need to replace the secret key with these 4 lines of code, which basically state in this first line, where is the .env file located? And then we want to use that .env file to load into memory. And then we want to grab the value of the secret key to apply as the value of the secret key within the actual project settings. And this value can be different in different environments. And then the last thing we want to do, since we are using Heroku, we want to comment out the databases variable and replace the databases variable with this variable, which states the default database will be using the DJ database URL, which is a package that automatically looks for this variable, the database URL variable, within any of the .env files. And that can also be different for different environments. And before we run this, we also want to make sure that the secret key that we had also defined does exist in our .env file with the same value that we removed from the settings.py file. And any strings and integers within the .env file, make sure that you don't include the single or double quotes. Just go straight to the value with no quotes, just like I did here. So now that should be it, and let's go ahead and give it a run and see if it works. And this is most likely a Windows specific thing. If you do experience the UTF-8 codec problem like I'm experiencing here, go ahead and stop your project. Go right into the folder where your .env file was created. And this usually only happens when you are using the echo command. So if you use the mouse, this wouldn't be an issue. Go ahead and edit with Notepad. Go to encodings. We could see that it was automatically created with UTF-16 as its encode. Go ahead and switch that to UTF-8 and then save. Just save just this file. And then go ahead and run it again. And this time you shouldn't have an error. And we see the Django rocket ship indicating that everything was a success. And within Visual Studio, I had already gone into my project settings and configured it to point to port 8000, which is the default port. And then to add any other files or any other variables, you could add as many or as little as you want to this file. And then to use them, just use this os.getEnv and specify the name of the variable that you placed inside your .env file. And that's it. In this video, we will be configuring our remote variables. So these are the same variables that live inside of a .env file, except since we are ignoring this file in our git ignore for the repository, we can't just add them locally and expect them to exist on our remote staging or production or development environments. And also, the purpose of separating these variables in this way is so that each of those environments can have a different value. So that's another reason why we don't actually track this file in our repository. So to start, I will go into the Becoming an EntDev app in my Heroku dashboard. And here, navigate to the Settings tab, and then scroll down to Config Variables and select Reveal Config Vars. Now, before I started this video, I went in here and I deleted the secret key variable, and that's the variable we're going to be using for this demonstration. A lot of these other variables exist because I did already go through and create everything and wrote all of the chapters prior to recording these videos. So if we go to any of the folders within our repository, whether it be the root of your repository where your .git folder lives, or the root of your project where your manage.py file lives, as long as it's in the repository somewhere, open up your command line. In this case, I'm using Windows PowerShell and always running it as administrator. Here we need to first log into our Heroku account, and this is because in previous exercises we've already gone and we've created our Heroku account, we've created our Heroku repositories and our Git repositories, and so assuming that you have already completed all of those steps, hitting Heroku logon right now will prompt you to press any key. Then it takes you to the browser where then you actually have to log in, create a session. Bada boom, bada bang. It didn't actually ask me to enter my email and password because in a different browser tab I was already logged in. So it just assumed the same credentials, same login session. So now within the command line you could see that it does see me as actually logged in, and here it shows you the username or the email associated with your account so that you can verify that you are on the correct account. To add our secret key through the command line, you simply run the Heroku config add, and then specify the name of your variable and the value. And here I'm giving it a modified secret key. I just changed some numbers and some letters to make it different. And then I'm specifying the app. So when you first saw in the video, I had 4 items on my Heroku dashboard. I'm specifying the first item in that dashboard, which is the Becoming an EntDev app. If you were following along with the book from chapter 1, this represents the production app for Becoming an EntDev, whereas the other ones pertain to staging and development. And there was a personal one in there as well. So when I go ahead and execute this command now, it very quickly tells me that it was done. Now we want to verify that it was done. I'm going to go back to the browser where I had my Becoming an Ent Dev app open. I'm just going to refresh this page to see if it does in fact appear in the config vars. And you can see that it does, and it has the exact same value that I've applied. Now for those of you who do like an easier way of doing this without having to go through the command line, you could have just simply typed your variable here, and my value. And bada boom, bada bing. But I'm going to go ahead and delete it because that's nothing. And that's it. That concludes adding a remote environment variable using the Heroku command line interface. In this video, we will be creating a new Django app. And one thing to keep in mind is that a Django app is different from a Django project. So you can think of an app more like a package that you would find on like PyPy.com for all the Python libraries. The only difference is that this lives in your project. It lives in your repository. It's not being shared anywhere publicly or privately. And so you're basically creating a package completely from scratch. Now to do that in Visual Studio is really easy. We'll go to our Solution Explorer, and you can right click on any folder that you want to place it in. Now we haven't created any apps yet for this project. So right now we only have the one folder and our virtual environment folder, and this OBJ object folder is specific only to Visual Studio. So right click and click Add, and select Django app from the list. We'll name this Chapter 2, and then select OK. Now you can see that it did in fact add the Chapter 2 app into our project and pre-populated it with several different files for just a stripped down bare bones app that was added. One thing we do need to configure in here is in the apps.py file where it says name equals chapter _2, you want to specify the folder name that you placed it in. In this case, it is found inside of the Becoming a Django Ent Dev folder. So here, we also need to specify that. And it's in Python dot notation. The next thing you want to do is go into your settings.py file, and under your installed apps, you do want to add the full path to the app that you just installed. So it would be the same Becoming a Django Ent Dev, and Chapter 2. And then if we run the project, we could see that we do get the Django rocket ship, indicating that there were no problems with how we installed this app. Now that we have other folders that we can look at, as you can see, if you really wanted to, you could place a Django app inside the templates folder, but you would have to also configure the paths in the exact same way that we did, pointing to the new folder destination. You can also click on the name of your project itself. As long as your project isn't running, by the way. And then right-click on the name of the project itself, go down to Python, and you could see a list of other commands that you can access through the IDE as well. So our make migrations, our migrate, our create super user, collect static files, and a slew of other ones. Inside your project drop-down, there are also a list of other commands that you can access as well. Some of them are also the same. And that's it. You now have created a new Django app. In this video, we will be creating a new Django app using the command line. And one thing to keep in mind is that a Django app is different from a Django project. A Django app can be thought of more like a package, similar to that found on pypy.org, except it lives only in your project, in your repository. It's not being shared or stored anywhere publicly or privately. To do this in the command line, first I will show you that no app does exist at this time. We first go into the root of your project where your manage.py file lives, and then open up your command line. In my case, I'm opening up Windows PowerShell as administrator. When doing this, you first have to create the folder that you want the app to live in. And so I want to place it in the Chapter 2 folder that's found in the Becoming a Django Dev folder. So once I have that folder created, before we run the next command, we can go in there and see that there is in fact a blank Chapter 2 file or folder now created. So heading back, I will now run the Python manage.py start app command. Here you specify the name of the app that you're creating. In this case, it's called chapter_2. And then the next parameter is the folder location that you want to place that app in. In this case, it's called Becoming a Django Dev, and the Chapter 2 folder inside of that folder. And so now if we go back in there and open the Chapter 2, we see it now has a bunch of files that pertain to the app that we just created. Going back to Visual Studio, we do see that Chapter 2 app does now exist. I'm going to include it in my project so that I could search its files. That's not a necessary step, by the way. Same thing as when we created an app inside the Visual Studio IDE. We have to come into our apps.py file and do the same thing and specify the folder that we placed this app in. In this case, it's Becoming a Django Dev. in Python dot notation. Then in our settings file, you have to add that app to the installed apps list. Specifying the same value that you just specified in the apps.py file, becoming a Django Chapter _2. Now if everything runs okay, or if everything was set up okay, we run the project and we see the standard Django rocket ship indicating that everything was a success. And that's it. In this video, we will be executing Django commands on a local environment in order to run our make migration and migrate commands to build our data structures in our database for the very first time. And prior to recording these videos, I had already written the entire book, and so we will start by dropping the tables in my database just in case you have tables in your own database that you want to drop. In your PG admin database tool, go ahead and open that up and look for your local database, and then open the schemas public tables tab, and you'll see that currently I have 20 tables in my database. Right click that tables tab and open the query tool, and enter in these two commands to drop all of your tables and then recreate the public schema, and then press the execute or play button at the top of your tool. Now when we refresh, we'll see that those tables no longer exist. And now in the root of your project where your manage.py file lives, go ahead and open your command line tool. And then activate your virtual environment. And now here you can make your migrations for the very first time by executing the Python manage.py make migrations command. And for you, you'll probably see a lot less than what I have, because a lot of these are for chapters beyond chapter 2. And then you can run your manage.py migrate command. And this will take the migration files, which specify what the data structures should be and the constraints that are on them, and then it actually builds those structures within your database when you execute the migrate command. This doesn't actually migrate data, this is just your data structures. And then when we run the Python manage.py run server command, we can see that there are no issues at this time. And then going back to our PG admin database management tool, when we right click the tables tab and click refresh, we'll see that we now have 20 tables. If you're still on chapter 2, in doing this for the very first time, I believe you will either have 8 or 12 tables instead of the 20 that you see here. And that is it. In this video, we're going to access the shell on any of our remote environments in order to execute Django commands, specifically so that we could run our make migration and migrate commands on our development environment on Heroku. And to begin, I had already gone through and written the code and the book for all the chapters in this book prior to recording these videos. So I'm going to show you how to drop our tables so that we could drop everything that I had before executing our make migration commands, so that we could see that this was done successfully. The first thing I did was I went into pgadmin, our database management tool, and I looked for my database for Heroku on the remote connection that we previously established in this tool. It's the only one that's colored gold, indicating that that's the one that you have permission to access at this time. Scroll down to schemas, public, and tables. Right click and open the query tool. From there, enter in this command to drop your tables and recreate the public schema, and then hit execute or the little play button up at top. You'll see that it dropped all of the tables, and if we refresh, you'll have to open up the schemas tab one more time and see that there are no tables anymore. We can verify this by going into our Heroku dashboard within our browser. Mighty C is the name for the development environment on my account. Yours will be something completely different. And then click Open the Resources tab and look for your Heroku Postgres database and click the little arrow that opens it in a new tab to show you the information about that database. And we can see here that there are 0 tables at this time. And so now, accessing this from your command line, go anywhere within your repository on your local machine and open up your command line. Here I'm using Windows PowerShell as administrator. Then execute the same Heroku login command that we've done before and follow the prompts to have it log you in within the browser. Now that you're logged into Heroku within your command line window, execute the Heroku run bash command, specifying --app and the name of the app that you would like to access the bash for. In this case, it's the Mighty C app. And here we could run the ls command to show us that we have all the files that we're expecting to see within our repository, because prior to recording this video I had already gone and pushed all of my code up to this environment. And so in order to access or execute any Django commands, we first have to navigate into the Becoming a Django Entdev folder, which houses the manage.py file. And here we can see that the manage.py file does exist in this folder. So now we can run our Python manage.py make migrations command. And then our Python manage.py migrate command. And because I had gone through and recorded all of the chapters of the book prior to making these videos, I have some chapter 3 models that exist that if you're still on chapter 2 don't exist. So for me, I actually have to make migrations chapter 3 and specifically tell it that I want extra stuff created. Now when I run my migrate commands, it performs the command without any errors at this time. And when we navigate back to the browser to look at the table structures for this environment, I'm just going to refresh this page and see that we do now have 20 tables that exist. And going back to the pgadmin database tool, I'm going to refresh the tables tab one more time and then open it up and find that yes, we do have 20 tables at this time. And much of them are the Chapter 3 models that you likely do not see at this time. So if I'm not mistaken, you might have either 8 or 12 tables at this time if you're still on Chapter 2. And that is it.